Further reaction to the AJ Puk trade. Equally, how is the market reacting to this? Tons to get into. This is Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins, your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK for listening to the pod. Firstly, hit subscribe, leave a review. Thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first or second listen. It's a double episode day thus far on Friday. It's also a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel, also called Locked on Marlins. Join me there, particularly in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this AJ Puk deal. What's happened subsequently? There's been further trades today. Who goes next, I think, is the main question that I asked to you. So join us in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. This episode is brought to you by our good friends over at SupplyHouse, and SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop your next plumbing, HVAC, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. And as already teased out, delighted to welcome in the house for the first time this season, regular season anyway, Smoking Joe Frisaro in the house. Joe, how are we doing?
Peter, I'm doing wonderful. Like you say, way too long, and I'm excited to chat with you, my friend.
No doubt about it. There's tons to get into, Joe. And we're going to kind of go back a little bit. Start there. We're just going to get your sense, because I must say, you've been on fire on Twitter this year. I've loved it. And it has been a lot of truth talking is how I would describe it. So I want to just get a sense, just where's your head at right now with the Marlins and the approach that's been taken with the front office turning over? Just give us a sense of where your head's at this point. Translate the Twitter into this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's been frustrating in my point of view, and we could take it back to when you go to the playoffs last year and you are supposed to be building and you're promoting more in 24 and skip it on opening day. And here we are a week before the deadline, roughly 4 or 5 days before the deadline, and they're selling. And they sold to a team, we'll get into the Puk trade, to a team that essentially you were neck and neck with. You were the fifth and sixth wild cards, playoff teams last year, or second and third wild card teams. And you sold to a team that was right there with you. They're looking to try to get back over the World Series and try to win it this year. And the Marlins, although we'll talk about the return, and it's a solid return, we'll break that down further. But it's just a year ago at this time, they were adding. Now they're subtracting. And I think, Peter, on the bigger picture where I am overall, and where my frustration with Peter Bendix has been, is everything's been a mixed message. Everything's been a mixed message. They started off, we're iron and now, iron in the future. And that never really works because you need commitment to now. You can't just half commit now and half commit to the future. And then you're not going to be good in the future or now. Secondly, pull the trigger so quickly on Luis Ariz. And that was the bus. Get rid of him. Okay, you're 0-9. It wasn't looking good. But I don't think in 20-something years following Major League Baseball, covering Major League, that I've heard a GM, technically, it's whatever the role, punt publicly the first week of May, even if you are 20 under. Like, I had literally people in the game saying, that's a big no-no. Even if it's true, it's a bad message to your clubhouse and so forth. Now, also, is Skip in or out? We don't know what Skip's doing. I'm not completely sold he's gone. But, then they go 30 under. They come out of the All-Star break like they want to go to the playoffs. Kicking butt. They're playing hard. They're like, what has been going on? 1+ inning saves for Tanner Scott, who's your number one trade chip. And then it's like, Jazz, we love you in center, but Ariz is gone. When Lopez was hurt, you got to play some second. We got to show you there. You go, I love playing second. Jazz wants to be an infielder. Okay, Jazz, good day in the infield. Back in center field. Yeah. Makes 2 diving catches, saves the game. They ultimately lost it, but made game runs. Everything, Peter, has been a mixed message.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I want to see some conviction.
What's the message at the point to the fans? I think that's the interesting bit. Is like, where are the fans at this point? You live in the market. I don't speak to any Marlins fans really. So, where are the fans' heads at this point?
They're the few that are left are enticed by tickets to the Caribbean Series or World Baseball Classic and Heritage Nights and Bark at the Park nights, or our good friends on Twitter who are 100% behind the analytic approach, and no matter what he does, it's going to be applauded. But that is not the fan base. This is a fan base that's seeing big league talent about to leave, even if they clean up on prospects. That big league talent is out the door, and this market, and we touched on it briefly before we hit the record button. It is, and I've experienced 5 fire sales, maybe more than me and Clark Spencer at one point, I think, retired with the Miami Herald, more fire sales as beat writers than anybody on the planet, because no other market fire sales as regularly.
No.
I know how it kind of goes, and it breaks the spirit, and the spirit has been broken. And then you get the Stanley Cup champs in Florida Panthers. So fans have that. We have a younger generation that is on TikTok. I have a granddaughter who's 14 years old. She's about to go into high school. They don't watch TV. They watch videos and they correspond with. So if you're doing a rebuild, you got a TV deal that you don't know what it's going to look like. So your revenue is going where? There. I just don't see why they didn't try this year. Yeah. And meaning try, they could have just kept a rise, signed Soler, and I'm going to go on there for the fact of this. Soler, if you had talked to him, you might have gotten him two plus for 33, 34 million. You probably could have gotten him for less than that. And why did I like Soler over some of the other names out there? And okay, it's not no knock on JD Martinez or Teoscar Hernandez. These are really good players, but Soler worked here. You would have had the continuity. Skip could have gone, and then if it didn't work, you could trade it at the deadline, and meanwhile, you would have had hope for your fans. I don't like seeing the media say, "Oh well, had they signed, Soler's having this stuff." No, it doesn't work. You don't earn that right to have a crystal ball, because you don't know how Soler would have performed here with a rise and what that would have done for Jake Berger and Josh Bell, and how that lineup was functioning under Skip's direction.
Yeah,
you know, that was the lineup to. They didn't have to go. I wouldn't have gone and traded the farm for Burns. What Baltimore did. To get someone like that to replace Sandy. You recognize they had shortcomings in their rotation, but they still had enough, and still do have enough pitching to have made this interesting, to at least giving the fans a, hey, we wanted to give it a shot. Now we could rebuild. Now you could say, well, you wouldn't have been able to trade Soler, but why would you have to anyway? If your eyes on the now and the tomorrow, you could have run Arise out year to year and Soler, and try to keep as much continuity while you were trading off the AJ Puks, the Tanner Scotts, and who knows? Look at the NL. The Braves have crashed. They are looking on. They are not doing. The Mets may pass them. So. You never know. That's why I wouldn't have quit. That's why I would have gone for it. So that's probably my most frustration with Peter Bendix.
Yeah, makes sense. And considering the profile of guys, we're going to kind of touch on the draft shortly after the first ad break anyway. But considering the profile, like particularly from the Arias trade, it does blend into the draft as well. Like the rebuild is on here. Both eyes are to the future at this point. How far in the future are we talking here, Joe? Like when are the Marlins going to be back in the mix?
You never know, because you don't know if the prospects are going to pan out.
No.
Like, okay, let's say they move Scott, which of course they're going to. The Marlins bullpen, as much heat as they took early in the year, they're pretty darn good.
Yeah.
But now Puk's out of there. So then Scott's going to be out of there. Then, okay, you want Sandy to come back at full strength. Let's say Sandy's ready to go opening day. What's next year's bullpen? Like, why are you keeping Sandy? Unless he's going to have to go. Right?
No,
I mean, so now you move in that. I have to think you had to have tied everything to the window of your pitching, because your pitching is going to determine. Why did Seattle make the trade for Rosarena and still possibly go after Jazz? Because they have their pitching, their starting rotation is good enough to win a World Series. That you don't know if that window, because guys, as you know, with starting pitching, it breaks. And one guy's up, one guy's down. But if you get 3-4 guys all clicking at the same time, boom, you go deep into the postseason, may win it all, which ultimately is the prize. The prize isn't to be, Jim Callis or JJ Cooper's number one team.
Yeah.
You don't want to be number one in the draft. Well, you want to be number one holding up the World Series trophy. Where's behind me? I got Jack McKeon there somewhere. Me holding the World Series trophy from '03 and Jack on my back wall there, sitting there with it. That's what you want, Peter.
Yep. Yeah.
Ultimately, I think our fan base is too caught up with, oh my gosh, we all like rebuilds. We all like prospects because prospects haven't broke our heart yet. So that's what I don't want the market to lose focus of. You want the prize.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I haven't been in it as long as you, Joe, as you know, but I'm already rebuilded out and I've only been through one.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely not in. I was same as you this off season. Completely been in lockstep with you of just get Soler back. Soler is Soler. We've seen what he can do. When he was healthy, he was an above average stick in Miami. It worked. Arias. Jazz, if he's healthy, is him. Burger Bell, Sanchez, De La Cruz.
The lineup, that lineup from last year with another year under our belt. Again, we're just expecting, as soon as I've been around enough, Peter, to hear when, and Bendix isn't the only one that does this, because I've heard Michael Hill say it too. Oh, well, we can lose Soler, lose those 36 homers, but a full year of Josh Bell and a full year of Jake Burger, you're just assuming 30, 60 homers from the two of them. Well, why did he hit 30 homers last year? Maybe because he had Soler in there and stuff, So, and this is the funny thing, because I started thinking about, and I'm sure soon we're going to get to who the Marlins just got. They essentially got a 21-year-old guy with a Jorge Soler profile.
No doubt. They really have. They've gone and got 21-year-old Soler. But the question will be now is, considering he's not on the 40-man, considering they've been service time manipulation around Max Meyer recently, considering next year is probably going to be a tough year, how quickly are they going to accelerate this guy? They're probably going to have the brakes on because, they want to, he's got to go on the 40-man this year because he is Rule 5 eligible. So, but 3-man league options, how slow are they going to play with this guy? It's going to be very interesting to see. But
as soon as he gets up here, you're starting the clock and you're not ready to win. Yeah. That's how you get in trouble. Then everyone hits arbitration at the same time. And then, at some point you have to spend money. Point if you want to win. This is what it comes down to, Joe. We'll carry on this conversation shortly. Before we do that, let's get into, firstly, our good friends over at Booking.com. Yes, sir, guys. And this episode of Locked on Marlins is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. And with summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities. Yes, we're talking about Milwaukee. Who's on Booking.com right now looking for hotels to go and see Jazz Chisholm Jr. in Milwaukee? I don't know. Let me know. Nevertheless, with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival's city. For me, Booking.com is the go-to place. For the London series, I was straight in, right next to the ballpark, the stadium, however you want to phrase it. Where do I want to be? How much do I want to spend? Is my wife happy? Yes, yes, yes. Let's hit the pay button. So the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even in your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. And guys, this episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports, as you know. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, baseball's still rolling. But as the playoffs wind down in other sports, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers. That's in full caps, by the way. All customers with a boost or bonus daily, also in full caps. That's right. There's something for everyone all day, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, guys, welcome back to Locked on Marlins with me, Peter Pratt, and Smoking Joe Frisaro. We are talking the Marlins. We are talking tons here. We've talked about the fan base, how it's feeling about Peter Bendix. We're also talking about, well, let's get into it. Let's talk about the big news that dropped overnight for me anyway. Woke up this morning and all of a sudden, Twitter's ablaze, WhatsApp groups ablaze. The Marlins have done it. They've jumped the market here. AJ Puk gone, 2 prospects back. For me, I recorded a pod on this earlier, Joe. I thought it was a very interesting deal. I could see the Diamondbacks requirement for certain. I love the fit for the Diamondbacks, actually, with AJ Puk. But what did you make of this deal? And particularly the profiles of the 2 prospects that the Marlins got back. I think it's a really good baseball trade. And I think the Marlins, I give Peter Bendix and staff a lot of credit for targeting an attainable prospect with upside.
Mhm.
And then I'll get what I think about the player and the profile in Miami. For one, when you see that De Los Santos was already Rule 5,
Yeah.
the D-backs already did that. Cleveland took him, sent him back. So, which is a signal this player can be had. And
Yeah.
it reminded me of when the Marlins traded Luis Castillo, the pitcher Luis Castillo,
Mhm.
and to San Diego, and he was returned because of the Colin Ray situation with the medicals. And then next thing you know, the worst day in Marlins history when Jose passed, and then the following into 17, and they decided that they were going to try to go with it, and they made the overpay for Dan Straley and included Castillo. Well, Cincinnati at the time was like, you want Straley, you want to kind of fortify your rotation to try to get back with the offense he had in Stanton, Yelich, Ozuna, and Uriel Mito, and so forth. Throw the prospect in, throw Castillo in. So that symbol that kind of reminded me of that. So I do like that they identified that player. I think, Peter, when I see De Los Santos, for one, he's going to be a big league regular, and
Yep.
he could be a 30 homer guy.
Yeah.
Now he may be a 240 hitter, 30 homer guy, and that's certainly fine. That's kind of reminds me a bit of the trade when the Marlins and the Rays traded for Jesus Sanchez, even though one's a right-handed hitter, one's a left-handed hitter. Similarly, where you traded Nick Anderson, reliever, and Trevor Richards, two relievers, to Tampa for Ryan Stanek and the prospect Jesus Sanchez. So the return's similar, if you were to say that. Now, from the Diamondbacks end, there's a team that's trying to get back to the postseason and go deep. He's better than what they had, and they got 2+ years of control.
Yeah.
So it makes it interesting with the Scott return, who is strictly a rental. So good return for the Marlins, because when you get down to it, what the Marlins did wrong with Puk, in my opinion, was they didn't identify who he really was. He's not a closer and he's not a starter, but he's a strong lefty leverage reliever who throws 97. So they tried to, because they didn't want to spend on a starter because they lost Sandy to the injury early on. They tried to convert him to that, which was their failing. And then, at the end, once he got in a role and he got rid of the sweeper they made him throw as a starter and went back to his fastball slider, he became what we saw the month of June and July, whatever it was, a very, very reliable. So high, you're not winning in the postseason without bullpen. So high value for that leverage reliever. And then from the Marlins return, high value for a 30 homer caliber guy in a ballpark it's hard to hit 30 homers in. So very good baseball trade. Now, what does it tell me about the profile that the Marlins are looking for offensively? Because this is a struggle that not just Peter Bendix is going to have. He's the latest to tackle it. But every GM that has tried to build an offense in Lone Depot Park has encountered the same obstacles. You can't hit there. The power, it's hard. It's like San Francisco and Seattle. Randy Arozarena is not going to be really happy. And if I hope for Jazz's sake, he's not traded to Seattle, because that is not an offensive ballpark. So, but what did the Marlins just do in the last biggest moves they made? Got an 80 power guy, a guy who legit power. Forget the swing and miss, because, yes, he's not the most polished slugger, but De Los Santos has, if he stays healthy and, and has his timing right, can do 30 bombs, which is very good. And who they just draft with their first pick? Peter Morlando, who is more power over hit right now. 110, 12, 18 year, 19-year-old, high school kid. So I am all for exit velo playing in Miami, because you need those guys. That's why Duvall did well. That's why Soler did well here. Guys who can hit the ball really hard. That's why Jesus Sanchez does well, because he could drive at 450, and even as hard as it is to get it out. But those guys who are just more gap to gap seem to struggle here. So you could see they're looking for the power dynamic, but how is it going to function? How is it going to become a productive offense in a ballpark? Or you just kind of concede? I kind of thought the best offenses in the last 8 years had been in 17 when D. Gordon with the speed, steal 60 bags, was hitting in front of Stanton with the 59 homers. And then you had Ozuna to protect and Yelich and so forth. And then last year with Luis and followed by Soler. That kind of gave them, even though the numbers offensively weren't great, it was a functioning winning offense on many nights. So it's going to have to be a blend, and maybe that's what they're thinking. Although Xavier Edwards isn't a speeder, but he's like showing he can get on, that type of thing. But they're going to have to kind of figure that end out.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's a very intriguing profile, and one, to your point, you don't have any question marks over the power itself, and so it's going to clear any fence, which is where you're going. Where you seeing though? We see this move for Puk. We see a few other relievers being moved around. It's like, teams are worried about missing out now at this point because, the first domino goes, it's Puk maybe. Where's Tanner Scott in this, and what kind of return are we going to expect to see from Tanner Scott? He's a level above in terms of production, but clearly it's as a rental. And so what should we expect here from the return?
It almost could be an identical trade. That's why I would have liked to package these guys. And it's not just these guys. That's the Jack McKeon in me. Package these guys. Throw I don't care. Throw two of them in there. If you give them two rentals. If you want JT, Chergos, get a righty and their lefty, and you get two bullpen pieces. And then you up the ante. So it's going to be fascinating because our team's going to really give the overpay on the closer without exhausting it looking for someone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the Marlins demands, they should be high. That's why I would have moved Tanner well before now. I would have tried to beat the market with him because now you're given, it's not just 2 months, which is 60-ish games. You would have 3 months or, before the All-Star break, and I'm sure that they're holding out for the best deal, but man, that's going to be really hard. It's going to be hard, but they should get a strong return. That's no doubt. But I would have liked to see them package him with someone. And maybe they still will.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was surprised that Tanner Scott wasn't traded earlier just because it was clear that he was dominant. And for any team that's looking to acquire that, we'll get a dominant reliever into your bullpen with 90 games to go rather than 60. Like,
Correct.
Probably the value is not going to adjust dramatically by getting him a month or so earlier. And so you're going to be in the same spot, but you could have had Tanner Scott in the 7th, 8th, 9th, wherever you want to use him for the last month and a half.
No, you're right. And maybe true, this could work to the Marlins' favor. We saw it's not a reliever, but with Ozzie Albies going down, let's say somebody's closer goes down between now and the next, and it does happen. And we just saw, the A's closer with Miller, he's off the market. So does that, bring that market over to Scott? We saw the Orioles make a trade today. For bullpen. So how Bendix threads this needle, it's probably going to, in terms of how savvy he is to pull this one, if he could get Scott and really hit a home run with it, then he's, hat tip to him. And but then conversely, what if he gets shorthanded on it because he overplayed his hand, he held on to him too long, and he lost the return, because the thing is, normally you wouldn't, go all in for a wild card, but with the more expanded wild cards, you might get a break on a rental because you're guaranteed 2 playoff games, if you're a wild card.
Yeah. I'm with you. It's going to be fascinating to see how it goes with Tanner Scott. Fascinating to see, do they take it right to the wire? Fascinating to see the return. I'm with you. I think the return will align pretty closely to the type of overall value you've got from AJ Puk. I know that the control is different, but Tanner Scott is just an animal at this point, and there's so much value in that, I think. So
yeah, but if you get one player and he's a super stud, and we don't know that because no one's just going to say I'm going to give you the next all-star, but you get a real toolsy, fast rise, real aptitude player. This is my fear, Peter, and this is what I thought Larry Beinfest and the old regimes did well. They always got pitching back. They're going to no pitching back in the Scott in the Puk deal, because they're going to be pitching ever coming back, because you can't just rely on your draft picks and now Max Meyer's back and so forth. You got to get some pitching back, or you're going to be on the other end of it. Oh, we got some hitters, but now we don't have the arms, and it's harder to get the arms. Trust me,
it is. Absolutely, for sure. Let's carry on the conversation after the final ad here, Joe. I want to talk about who's next. I want to talk particularly about Jazz Chisholm Jr., but equally like who else could go at this deadline. Before we do that, let's let you know about our good friends over at SupplyHouse. Yes, sir. And get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? No problem. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Also, pros, listen up. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Welcome back to Locked on Marlins, final segment here with me, Peter Pratt, and Smoking Joe Frisaro. It's Friday, the 26th of July. AJ Puk has been dealt 2 prospects back. The next question, though, Joe, who else will go? Who do you think is likely to go? Let's start with Jazz Chisholm Jr. There has been, to your point earlier on in the show, there's been some mixed messages around Jazz within the media, I would say, not specifically from Peter Bendix or the organization. Mixed messages within the media around Jazz. And it feels at this point like there's a market for Jazz at this point. It feels like the Marlins are interested in entertaining offers. Where do you see the situation for Jazz? Do you see him being dealt at this deadline specifically?
Yeah, they don't have to move him. That's the thing.
No, they don't.
But they also have shown no inclination to want to extend him. And I was kind of screaming, that's the thing. You talk about, Jazz is being Jazz, Jazz's personality, Jazz being a loose cannon on podcasts, Jazz not necessarily being embraced by everyone in the clubhouse. So all this stuff kind of compiles itself. Yet the Marlins haven't shown the conviction to say, Jazz, we love you and want to keep you and build around you. Yeah. So they must have the same concerns internally. The talent, we all know what's there. With the personality, we know what's there. Where does he go? If I'm the Marlins, I'm knocking on the Mariners' door. It sounds like the Pirates might be the team he ends up with, but the Mariners have the system, Peter. Even with the Rosarena train, they have the system still. And like I said, there could be a desperation in Seattle and a GM who's already been known to make a lot of trades. And I know I said earlier, Jazz would probably rather go play in Pittsburgh in terms of places to hit. But if I'm the Marlins and I'm looking for the, fish where the fish are, that's where the prospects are. And you go there because I think Julio Rodriguez is down, hurt. They have need. And they got a team where, obviously he can play infield, outfield, so forth, and he makes things happen. So that's what I do. And I would not just say, if they already made the Rosarena trade and moved 2 prospects who weren't their top prospects, but make no mistake, Peter, the Rays did well in that trade. We'll come back and revisit. The Rays are going to do well in that trade. Don't pay as much attention to people's top 30s and so forth. They don't necessarily align that there's that system's loaded. So if I'm the Marlins, I'm knocking where I think the best prospects are. I think they're in Seattle for Jazz.
Yeah, very interesting to see. I thought the same this morning when I looked at the Rosarena deal. I don't think that directly impacts Jazz, to be honest with you. I don't think it's one or the other.
At first, I thought it was, that close that door. But people I talked to were like, don't be so sure. Now, that's people saying that they have they still have, the inventory to make that move.
Is there anyone you like particularly in the Mariners system? I mean, I haven't prepped you for this.
I haven't broken it down. I'm sure there are. I didn't dive that deeply into it, but it probably wouldn't be bats, because if it was bats, they wouldn't be trading. But it just how long? Where do you want? At what point? You can't have a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds, even 21 as a young AAA guy. It took, what's Jesus Sanchez now, 25, 26. He's just the last 2 years. He's starting to find his groove. So just because you could hit the big leagues doesn't mean you're performing at the big leagues. So,
Yeah.
I didn't break them down to that closely. I probably should have done a little more homework on that, but others can find that. But there are prospects there, and that's kind of where I'd want to go, where the prospects are. A team I think would be very interesting for Jazz, and I think the Angels with Ron Washington as manager and what they're building. I don't know how strong they are in their system, and I know they're not in it. But as a trade, I'd love to see how Jazz does with a guy like Ron Washington, as his manager, to really bring out, kind of corral all the things that that make Jazz a risk, and
Yeah.
just curtail that. Just as me, as someone who likes Jazz and thinks that how his career may really take off would be to, in an organization with a manager like Ron Washington, who could kind of like, hey, I got him. That's cool. We'll work infield. Hey, what do hey, how do we keep you motivated? How do we keep, what's really bothering you? We don't want you sulking. We don't want you napping through meetings either. So, how do you want to do this?
It's a really great shout, Joe. I mean, no one will be expecting the Angels to be trying to pull a deal for Jazz at this point, but I love
Could be
that.
an
I love that
off-season
connection.
thing, but
Could be an off-season,
that's me trying to find a fit where I think he would. That's me more for where I think Jazz may really take off. Jazz is a star, Peter. Let's make no mistake. He should want to be. LA is stars. That's where you want to be there. And obviously here we love him here, but if we're not ready to win, what are we doing? You got to try to get the return, whether it's now or later. But obviously, Scott's the first. Keep an eye on JT Chargos. I think not enough people talking about him as a trade chip. Maybe Josh Bell if someone goes down. But it's all the usual suspects. Whether Dela Cruz, I don't know.
Yeah. How many of these relievers you think are going to go? I guess if like Puck's with his control,
Puck, Scott,
Puck, Scott,
and then you got JT can go, and
Cronin's been talked about a little bit as well.
I'm sorry, who?
Cronin, Declan Cronin.
Yeah, I'm sure he could go, but you're not going to bring a lot home there. But but at least three. At least three.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Just briefly talk to me. Two of the pitchers I want to briefly touch on before we finish up here. The breaking news in some ways today has been that Max Meyer is being recalled this series. He's expected to go, I think, tomorrow. So the Marlins, right? About time they left him down there in AAA. They've got what they wanted out of this, right? A healthy Max. Let's not kind of miss that fact. Yeah. He's remained healthy on his return, but the Marlins have got this extra year of control. What was your general take on the way the Marlins played that situation?
I think he has a grievance. And now that what could happen is, and now it happened when I was covering the Marlins, grievances were filed. Me didn't necessarily know about it, but here's a guy who they said, made opening day roster. He said he earned it, and next thing he goes down, and clearly there's, I don't know how easy it is to prove it, but there's manipulation.
Yeah.
So from a business, if I'm Max's representatives, I'm not happy at all.
No way.
With how this has played out. They brought everyone else up and they kept him down. And so that aside, there's the business end of it. I thought he has a real gripe. But now on the other side, he's back up, chip on his shoulder. He's already didn't need much chips on his shoulder because he's the type of kid that wants to prove everyone wrong anyway. So he's going to be one of the few fun people to watch in the second half. So that aspect's good.
No doubt. Joe, there's another guy I want to ask you about just to round up here, only because I know that, you'd have, some insight here because, when you were following the team, very closely on the daily beat. But talk to me about Edward Cabrera, who has continued to puzzle me, continues to puzzle Skip Schumacher. What's going on? Jekyll and Hyde is the right.
Jekyll and Hyde. He could be as good as anyone, and then he could be what just happened. It's really, really hard to fathom. I mean, I don't like that they make him throw like 80% change-ups and then he gets hurt. I mean, he throws like close to 100 with his fastball. If you want to be a fastball change-up guy, whatever, it always seems he never stays healthy, and he's not reliable in that regard too. And then you see he hits the wall after 3 or 4 innings. I probably am moving him. And it's hard to get rid of that arm because he clicks somewhere else and you can be laughed at. You trade a 15-game winner and, all this other stuff, but it just has not worked here. He'd probably be a guy I'd look to move now. Like maybe you package him with Tanner or something like that if you want to really, because he's just, you don't know what you're getting, and
No.
that's what drives organizations and managers the most crazy of anything is you want a consistency in performance. So, you run Jazz out there every day, you know what you're getting. You
Yeah.
run Tanner Scott, you know what you're getting. You run even Trevor Rogers with his ups and downs, you kind of know what you're getting.
Yeah.
But with Edward, you're getting a guy who looks like an ace and a guy who looks like he doesn't belong in a rotation. I don't think just as easy as making him a reliever, because there's a whole different way about preparation, and you're going to hold up for 70, 80 appearances. And, do you warm up quickly? He's a starter profile, just he can't get it together. He might just be a complete change of scenery guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. One final one, then we'll get out of here. Skip Schumacher. There's been some rumors, obviously, around his future. But what have you made of the job he's done this year in the conditions that he's had to work within? And I think, post All-Star break too, right? All of a sudden, the club all of a sudden seems to be playing hard.
Yeah. Skip's a really talented young manager. Let's make no mistake. He connects. He's a fighter and stuff. I'm not sure he's a rebuild manager. And I mean that by saying winning everyone wants to win every game. That's a given. But sometimes you have to see what a guy is. And that's why when you're not in it, you could sit around and say, I want to see how this guy handles the 8th inning, this guy handles the 9th inning. I think it's almost malpractice to have given one Tanner Scott 1+ inning save this year, let alone 3 or 4. They lost, obviously. Yes, they were obviously we're doing this on Friday before the Marlins game, the series finale against Baltimore. Well, the game or so against the Mets, when they were losing 6-3 to the Mets in the 9th inning, and they mounted that rally when Edwin Diaz had the brain fart and didn't go to first base, and he created this gigantic mess. He had Tanner Scott up in the 9th. He was ready to come in. They were down 3. He was already ready to use him.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm one game out in the wild card, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
When I'm 30 games under, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Meaning Skip in the St. Louis way has been, they don't rebuild in St. Louis.
Yeah.
That he's like, we're trying to win every day. But think about that. What are you accomplishing? And it's not that you're trying to throw a game, but you know what? Maybe you find that someone else in that bullpen can handle leverage, because now they're used to doing it.
Yep.
Not just going to the same bullet. So I'm not sure that's exactly, the way. That doesn't mean he can't, but generally a rebuild manager is more of a teacher. And that's not to say they don't work and teach. So I'm not sure, but doesn't mean I want him to leave. Is the organization better with him? The fact that he's still here, which is real puzzling, because he's without it's again, it's part of that mixed message we kind of started with. It's like, what does he want to do? Is he wanting to be patient? If they catch lightning in a bottle next year, the year after, then he looks like a brilliant manager. Or does he want to say, hey, I'm ready to go now. Let me, test the market after the season, what could be a potentially better fit. But then if I'm the Marlins too, if I'm Peter, I'm looking to say, okay, what exactly should 25 look like? And do we need more of a father figure who's just going to kind of teach these kids? Or do we need the guy that's, we can't lose tonight. You can't lose that battle. That's what you got to find out. And those are two different. That's why I don't like the half in, half out thing, because it sends a weird message, and you got half your clubhouse is ready to win, half still learning. So you create the guys grow frustrated with the inexperienced guys. That's how that's me doing this forever. These are the things that the spreadsheet doesn't necessarily show you, that fans that haven't been embedded in clubhouse cultures don't really see. But that does to say that maybe Skip, if he is part of a rebuild thing, to say okay, this is what we're going to do. If it means a week of Brujan training and we lose 3 games that week, but he becomes a hell of a player because of it, and we're better when we're ready to win because he went through the learning experiences, then I'm doing that. And I think too many get caught up in the moment.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, there's been a lot of mixed messages in this episode we've spoken about anyway. Here is definitely not one. Joe Frisaro, thank you for joining me on Lock the Marlins. It's been an absolutely stunning conversation, and I'm sure everyone that listens to this episode will think the same. It's been absolutely awesome. It's been way too long. Here's another direct message as well to the guys listening. Normally, Saturday, Sunday, day off for Pete Pratt. Yeah, normally it's downtime. However, there's going to be episodes tomorrow. There's going to be episodes on Sunday. We are going right up to the deadline, full steam ahead. There's going to be so much happening. So make sure you've hit subscribe. Join us even on a Saturday, even on a Sunday. We'll probably be recapping Max Meyer's first start back. Equally, there'll be tons of rumors. So looking forward to that. Joe, appreciate you taking the time. Look forward to seeing you soon, of course.
Peter, anytime, my friend. Hope everyone enjoyed this one. Okay, take care, guys.
All right, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.